everybody, welcome to the Ronline Report. What a guest we have today. This is a man I've known for a very long time. All of you are very familiar with him, and it's taken a while for me to get this together, but it's well worth the wait. Jay Cutler, four-time Mr. Olympia, everybody. Jay, thanks for being here.
Glad to be back, Ron. It's we go way back, so it's always good to chat a little bit. I see you represent, man. That's a 2009 style, I think.
Wow, what a memory on you.
Yeah.
So it's vintage at this point. Collector's item.
It's a vintage thing. It's like those throwback concert shirts, Van Halen's and Motley Crue's and all that stuff.
So I'll start off with how I first found out about Jay Cutler. I want to say it was right around this time of year, maybe like April or May in 1993. I was working for Louiswick out at the American Sports Network of California. I'd been there for a couple of years already, and people from all over the country and around the world used to send in pictures and videos of new talent, because Lou was he was an amazing talent scout, that guy. He had an eye for talent that he could see guys that were going to be good long before anyone else saw that potential. So anyway, the stack of pictures comes from, I think it was someone from your gym in Gold's Worcester that sent the pictures.
Yeah.
And so you'd been training like a year at that point, is that right?
I don't even think a year, to be honest.
Wow. Okay.
And it's funny because I always talk about this. I actually got to see Derek Farnsworth was training out in Fitchburg, which was like a couple towns over.
Yeah.
And he's the one that actually told Louiswick, hey, there's this kid training in Worcester with these really huge legs. He's got a lot of potential. Young guy. He's only been training a short time, but he's looking like the next big thing. And remember, we had like Matarazzo and DeMeo that came out of there already. We had Victor Terra was in the area.
Yeah.
All these guys. I mean, you probably know because you were living in California, and I was pretty envious actually. I think when we actually spoke for the first time, because I know you were training at Gold's Venice.
Yeah.
And you're in the mix, and I get to travel out there sometime later. But that was when you're training in Worcester, in central Massachusetts, like your dream is to get out of there, right? You want to go and train on the West Coast. So, I started getting these calls late night in the middle of the night and Louiswick on the phone, like, how's your pecs looking? How's your legs? And I'm like, man, this is kind of weird, but at the same time, it's kind of cool. Like, I get this scout kind of, hey, you can potentially be somebody, you need to get up on stage and compete. And that's really what gave me the first motivation to actually compete, because of course, I'm like every other kid out there, and kids watching this like, oh, I'm not ready to compete yet. I'm not big enough. Because, you're looking at guys in the magazines, and you think, oh, I got to look like that to be up on stage. And I didn't realize the whole transition process when you get lean, like, okay, you're going to look bigger on stage, right? So I had never dieted down before, and slowly he convinced me to do this little local show and whatever, and and then I started just taking off from there, and, the history's made, I guess.
Yeah. So you stayed out there. You stayed in Massachusetts for not that much longer, really, right?
No, you know what? That was like 92, 93.
Yeah.
I did the teen nationals. I got to travel to California for the first time. They actually had a misprint in the Boston Globe where round trip tickets were $99 on American Airlines. So Carrie and I flew out, this was my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
We flew out there to Venice Beach. And I remember this guy gave me this location of this hotel. He's like, oh, this is near everything. The USA was taking place there. Chris Cormier won that year. And DeMeo was competing. And Dennis Newman, all these guys. Craig Titus was in the show.
Yeah.
And we got to stay in this dumpy hotel, and it was so far from Gold's Venice, and we were too young to rent a car, and I had no money.
Yeah.
So I remember walking to Gold's Venice, and we went and trained there, my girlfriend at the time and I. Yeah. And, we went and trained, and we were in the gym like 4 hours just hanging out watching every celebrity that there is in fitness, walk through. Of course, it's USA weekend, so a lot of people are there too. Yeah. And Chris Aceto was there. By that point, we'd been working together, and luckily, Ed Connors came up to me. I remember seeing this guy walking through, this older guy, and I was like, he came over to me. He's like, where are you from? What are you doing? Where are you staying? he's like, why the hell are you staying down there? So he actually grabbed us and put us in his house. He said, you're staying too far. And we finished up the tail end of the trip with Ed Connors. And that's kind of how that relationship started. I went back and stayed with him the end of 93 after I won after the end of the season. I won the team nationals in June.
Yeah.
And then I put on like 40 pounds or something while I was out there for a month. And next thing you know, I was coming back there and winning the tournament champions and then a pro card and then meeting Joe Weider and all that stuff.
So I don't think I met you in person. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the 95 Arnold Classic and you were there with Casito. And man, you were enormous. You were, I don't know what you weighed, but you were just enormous. You had, everyone wore the plaid shirts back then, like the lumberjack things. And man, you were just a massive kid. And I think you were, at that time, you would have only been like 20.
I was 21. I was 21, I think, then. Yeah, 21. I had it all then, Ron. I mean, what you saw, when I was reaching Olympia level, I pretty much was, just not as refined.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of talent. I remember I came up watching like the Wheelers and Leveronis. Ronnie wasn't even really amazing back then. He was kind of like the back of the pack. Yeah. I saw Mike Francois. I mean, Dennis Newman was like the kid for Lou's guys. He was like the young guy that was coming up, and then unfortunately he got sick. But that guy would have been like, he was like, I see him like a Colin Von Moger, how he's like, he's like kind of what bodybuilding is, in my opinion. I mean, I know he's not competing as much, but that's kind of like a Dennis Newman type,
The kid he looked like a movie star. He really did.
Yeah, he had it all, and then unfortunately he got sick, and he had to step away. But like these guys, I all idolized, and I was just chasing that dream. And remember, the dream it only came from the magazines, Ron. So that's like things have changed and progressed so much, and I've kind of adapted to that. But like now, you see these people visible, but there's so many more people. It's confusing. I think you can't really handpick one guy that's like an up and coming star because there's so many potential bodies out there. But bodybuilding, fit, whatever it is, men's, it's a lot of it's mental. Like guys have the body, but you've got to have the mentality. And we saw a lot of great bodybuilders fall because the mentality was not there. And I think that mentality and I'm not going to be biased, but we had a lot of good guys come from the East Coast. We trained our asses off. We trudged through the snow. We got to the gym no matter what. And I think that we had this perception the California guys were kind of spoiled. They would drive around in convertibles and be on the beach and shit. Yeah. So it was like, man, our dream was to get there, but we figured, okay, our work ethic is going to put us over the top. And I feel like that's really what propelled me to the top more than anything. Is like I did concrete work and the value of the dollar, and I was able to put that into bodybuilding and really propel my career like to the next level beyond what anyone ever expected.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, Jay's genetic. He got where he was because of genetics, but I can say because I worked for Zwick for 8 years, and I saw all these pictures and videos come through. I saw a lot of people with phenomenal genetics. You never heard of them, and most people never heard of them because they never amounted to anything for whatever reason. They didn't have it mentally. They had personal relationship problems, legal problems, God knows, any number of things. But genetics they are important. But for every guy with great genetics that's made it, there's at least 500 more that never amounted to anything.
I know, but let me ask you a question, Ron, and this is like, you saw a lot of like pictures come through there, right? And would Luke share those stuff with, like, say, look at this kid and whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, did you see a lot of wasted talent? Like, did you see a lot of people that didn't transpire into what was expected? And did you see, like, what was the most mind-blowing set of pictures you think you saw of someone that you could say, like, at a certain age was, like, just unbelievable?
I wish I could remember names specifically, but I remember seeing kids, young guys, anywhere from the ages of like 18 to 22, that they had everything. They had the bone structure, the muscle bellies, the shape, everything you could want genetically. Sometimes they would do a couple teenage shows and win, and then that was it for them. You'd never hear anything about them ever again. Sometimes they'd go from there to like the men's open and get crushed You'd never hear from them again. Most of them either just disappeared real fast or just never capitalized on it for whatever reason.
You know what's funny? I'll tell you, when I went and trained, when I went to that Gold's Gym at the end of '93, and I was walking around the gym before I met Ed Connors, I was the most freakiest bodybuilder I've ever seen in person. That was Lee Priest at the time, because he was like 20, bro, and he was fucking insane big.
Yeah.
He was crazy big. Like, I never seen anything like it. The guy couldn't even walk. He was so big. And I'm saying, this kid is like basically my age, you know?
Yeah.
And he was just unbelievably big. I never seen anything like that in my entire life.
Yeah, he's a special case, because I mean, you look at pictures of him flexing in his backyard when he was like 13. He was already bigger than, you know, most 19-year-old teenagers ever get. And by the time he was like 17, 18 and winning, he was beating grown-ass men twice his age at the Mr. Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember that's because Lou brought him out for early that season he brought him out to Venice, and the idea was he was going to compete in the Niagara Amateur, because Niagara Falls was a Pro-Am show, and the goal was that he was going to win that and be so impressive that I think it was Wayne DeMillia at that time that decided who got pro cards or not. I'm not sure. But the idea was that he would see him and be so impressed that he'd say, you know what, you deserve to be a pro, because he'd already won the national title a few times.
He won Australia, the national Australia like 3 times or something. So I think Ed Connors helped push him to get his pro card, and I think he got the card. But he was I mean, if people ask me like who I've seen in person, I saw Victor Richards at the same time. He was unreal.
Yeah.
But Lee Priest was like the biggest I've ever seen.
That was also the year, '93 was also the year, you probably saw Ferrigno in there. That's the biggest I believe he ever was in his life, was '93.
Well, he was impressive as hell when he came back. I know he finished like 12th or whatever, but that just shows you how the depth was at the Mr. Olympia at the time. But he was amazing, you know?
Yeah, he was training with Billy Smith, who was Thunder on the American Gladiators.
Yeah.
So when you came out to L.A. or went out to California to live, you didn't live anywhere near L.A., right? You went to Orange County?
No, I went to Orange County, moved in '99. I kind of wanted to be away from a lot of the riffraff. I say riffraff because it's like, you know, you get caught up in that scene a little bit. Yeah. And I didn't need like a special gym in order to train. Remember, before I came out, I built a home gym, and I was training at home when I won the nationals, and then I competed for my first couple of shows. So I was out in the middle of the woods, just like training away, and built this crazy home gym. And so I was away from everything. I was used to being kind of secluded. So when I went to Orange County, a friend of mine lived out there, so he kind of showed me around. I ended up being next door neighbors. You want to laugh, with Paul Dillette, literally right next door. He was like in the building next to me.
Was this Dana Point you lived in?
I was in Aliso Viejo.
Aliso Viejo. Okay.
So, you know, fast forward, it's funny because I moved in '99, and then in 2000 I started prepping for the Night of Champions, and I finished like second to last at the Olympia in '99. I was disappointed, and then, you know, I started training for NOC, and Dillette was training for the same show, and he used to drive up to Venice every day, and I'd see him when I was coming back after my first cardio and my first weight session. He would be leaving to go to LA, and I'd pass him, like, waving at him going out the gates, and, you know, he's like, I'm going to win this show, just so you know, because I don't know if he had won it the year prior, '99 or something, but he's like, I'm coming to win it. And then, of course, I beat him and a lot of other guys in order to grab that first title. That was my first victory, actually. And this is actually, I don't know if you can see this or not. This is the NOC ring.
Wow.
This is still this is the case that they gave it to me in 2000.
Those are diamonds.
That's the famous ring. It's never come out of the case.
Wow. Oh, you never just, well, I guess you wouldn't wear that around, right?
I never wore it. I should wear it for this interview. I'm just not into wearing it as much, you know.
I believe, was that the year you did the Pro Ironman too? Was that the first show you did that season?
No, that was '99.
'99, because I remember, you know, I would say I followed you the whole time. I always had a special interest for anyone from Massachusetts, of course. So I was always curious to see what you were doing, what you're up to. And I hadn't seen you win the Nationals. I didn't go that year. And I don't think I had been any of your pro shows. So the first pro show I ever saw you at was that Ironman '99. Yeah. I don't know where you ended up at that, second or third?
I was third, yeah. I was third.
Third, but wow. I was like, because I was right in the front of the press pit, and I was like, holy shit. Because, you know, I thought you'd be a decent pro. I didn't think you'd be anything special, to be honest with you. But when I saw you at that show, I'm like, oh my God, I think Jay's going to be a lot better than I thought he could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sure enough.
Yeah, I got third, and then I got fourth at the Arnold. Qualified me for the Olympia. Finished second to last at the Olympia, and then I won the NOC. I got eighth at the Olympia the next year, and then it was history after that. What you guys know about is like seconds, and Arnold's, and and then winning. So
your breakout year, and I think the show everyone still talks about, because you had a lot of great looks, but just like Flex Wheeler, everyone likes to talk about the '93 Arnold. It was a 2001 Olympia, right? That's where you beat Ronnie at the judging. But then, what happened between judging and finals for, I don't know.
An impossible change in scores happened.
Okay.
I was ahead by 6 points, and then Ronnie came back and won, somehow gained 9 points between the prejudging and the finals, and came back and won it. And, I didn't win the title, but you know what? It was still awesome. I mean, it was second place in the world to Ronnie Coleman. I mean, this guy's multiple winner at this point. And that's when you hear that whole, you got to knock out Mr. Olympia and da-da-da-da-da. And, I dealt with that for a lot of years until it finally happened. But, that was my huge rise. That was where people took notice. I mean, I moved up from 8th to 2nd, possibly could have won it.
Yeah.
And then, I dealt with this whole diuretic testing. At the time, they were testing for diuretics, and then I dealt with D'Amelia trying to say I failed for 6 diuretics or something. And
6 diuretics.
Yeah, some combination, and I had them retested. I went, I dealt with an attorney and all that stuff, and we overturned it because it was some bogus testing procedures. They tested again at the Arnold in '02 when I competed there and won. Of course, I passed that, and then they got rid of the diuretic testing after that.
So I think that's where your legend began, because all those years you took second to Ronnie, those were just those were exciting years. I mean, everybody was like, oh, Jay versus Ronnie. People got hyped up for the Olympia those years because we knew you would almost beat him in 2001.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting, and I was training in Vegas at the time, so the show was here. I moved to Vegas for many reasons. I mean, I wanted to build a bigger and better house, and I got into real estate. I bought a lot of real estate after 9/11 when I came up here, residential stuff, moved into commercial after that, and I still do some commercial real estate, not in town, but it was a huge opportunity moving to Vegas, and it allowed me to live on a much more lifestyle focused on. I could train 24 hours. I was traveling tremendously at that time. I was booked up for guest appearances. It really helped me turn my business into something really, really great that I couldn't probably have done in Orange County, California. I was limited there, although I missed it. I mean, living in Orange County is probably the best place in the world, but I enjoy living in Vegas because I can thrive on the business side, and it allows me to focus more on my work. I mean, people would think a lot of distractions in Vegas, but I never really got into that kind of stuff. But for me, my goal was always to be a successful bodybuilder financially. That was really from the get-go. It wasn't about, I want to win Mr. Olympia titles. I mean, it was a dream or whatever, but I realized that, okay, I want to be secure enough that I can pay to train and create a lifestyle in this. And I think really people know me for being business savvy rather than, he's the best bodybuilder, for his era.
Yeah.
But people looked, okay, I want to do what Jay did on the business side.
Right.
And I can't really say what made that. I mean, I had a great family value business side, but I was around the right kind of people. I had the right advisement. I've always had great advisors along the way up, but I've always had great relationships, and that's really what I can attribute a lot of my success to, is having neutral relationships with a lot of people and sitting back and listening instead of speaking all the time. Not like I know everything. I created a lot of relationships, and that opened up a lot of great opportunities for me between sponsorships, partnerships, business opportunities, and just being all around general friends with a lot of people with a lot of opportunity. That's all. So, I learn from everyone still to this day. I sit back and watch and pay attention to what everyone does. And I might not say a lot, but I'm visually, watching what goes on.
Right. I mean, when you talk to people, one reason they have so much respect and admiration for you, it's the titles are one thing, but I mean, there's a lot of guys that have won titles, even the Mr. Olympia, that people don't talk about, and they're not big fan favorites, but people, especially your fellow bodybuilders, the fact that you were able to create this brand for yourself, you didn't sit back and just wait for people to give you opportunities. You created opportunities. How early on were you starting to make a brand and think about merchandise and how I can actually make this a real career?
Well, I can honestly tell you, like Chris Aceto had a little mail order, you know, and he was doing this, you know, he had his muscle camps, and he was living in Maine, you know, and his ex-wife, you know, she was a top 2 Miss Olympia back when, you know, the women were super popular too. So she was guest posing, and, you know, they created this little branding, and they had like the mail order, and we did the 8x10 pictures. He taught me how to do that. So I remember when it was strictly mail order before internet existed, you know, I'd have like fans would write me through, you know, U.S. Postal or whatever, worldwide, and they send me notes, and I'd write back to everyone, and I have a little sheet, and I'd have one 8x10, one T-shirt, and I'd offer that kind of stuff to people. And, you know, people would send me checks and money orders, sometimes cash, to be able to, you know, merchandise this kind of stuff. So he kind of taught me the early ways of doing that, and that was right away, even before I was a pro. People were writing to me because I was featured in, like, you know, Muscle Mag or Muscle and Fitness or whatever, and I'd have a P.O. box at the end. But, you know, that slowly turned into, you know, guest appearances. Man, I remember I would pose at, people would call me up, and I remember getting $500 to guest pose. I remember flying to Hawaii for $500 just to guest pose, to be alongside Mike Matarazzo and Dorian Yates, and a guest posing because I was up and coming guy. Yeah. I mean, I did guest posings for $250. I mean, back then that was a lot of money for a kid at 20 years old, 21. And, you know, and then that eventually led to, I mean, you know, at the peak, you know, in the United States, I was getting $5,000-6,000 a pop, you know, for my guest appearances, you know, and that would be just a guest pose or whatever. Internationally, you know, that demanded 10,000 plus for an appearance. You know, and nowadays I'm still traveling, probably more than ever. I'm still booked for so many appearances, and, you know, things have kind of escalated now to be expos. So now I'm at a lot of these meet and greet expos, all the major trade events, and it's given me opportunity to stand in front of so many people, which is, you know, it's what I like to do. I like to give back, and, you know, I promote the shows. I do so many other things, but I'm still, even at 44, I'm still like nonstop with the traveling, and I'm still in the gym 5 days a week, bro. Like, it's still the best part of my day. I can honestly say, like, you know, if you said, Jay, what do you look forward to today? Today, you know, I look forward to going to the gym, you know. I may not know what I'm going to train till I walk in, but I'm still going to the gym to train.
Yeah. I mean, how has that really changed for you? Obviously, you still train and everything. You still, is the training changed quite a bit? Because I remember you were trying to downsize for a couple of years there.
I am still trying to downsize, bro. I mean,
I'm trying. It's not happening.
I'm 235. I know, you know, it's we have this discussion every year. I'll see you in a month at the Cutler show, but yeah, I have a vision on what I want to look like, okay, and it's still a challenge. I wake up in the mirror. It doesn't really go necessarily by weight. I just want to be lean in certain areas, and I'm relatively lean now. Yeah. But I still would like to get into like a certain conditioning look that I wish I could stay on a schedule for 12 weeks. At some point, I'm going to put that plan together. You know, it's just really hard because I'm so restrictive with the travel. I mean, I sit on an airplane. You know, I can make excuses just like everyone else. And it's just, you know, when you get to hotels, it's like you're tired. And I still try to I'm getting better at working out even when I'm traveling on the road. I find the time. But, you know, I still have this vision on how I want to look. And I have downsized. I eat half as much and I train half as much, if that makes any sense, meaning I was a huge volume trainer. You know, I did 30 sets per body part on average, sometimes up to 40, 50 for legs or back. I mean, it's just crazy. But I don't do as many sets, and I definitely don't do as much weight, but I eat, you know, half as much. I used to eat 5 pounds of meat a day. I mean, now I'll eat 6 ounces of meat per sitting, and, you know, not a ton of carbohydrates. I mean, my breakfast is really big, and the meal, you know, kind of before and after training are pretty sufficient. But I think those 3 meals are your most important meals. You don't have to really focus on getting in a ton of calories, but I still eat smaller, more frequent meals, which is a huge huge plus in anyone's routine. And I always tell everyone you got to space your meals out every 2.5, 3 hours. And I'm sure you do the same thing. I don't know if your plans are to get up on stage again and compete. You seem to retire every couple of years and then want to come back. But it's always a bug. You know, I don't want to compete, but I want to be able to walk in these places and say, holy shit, Jay still looks great, you know, and I still look at him as like a guy that possibly could come back. And don't take that as like, I'm not coming back and competing. There's no comebacks for me. It's over. I can, you know, people can wish, but it's not going to happen. I'm too busy for that now.
You know, physically, how do your joints and everything feel? Because you look at Ronnie, and I mean, my God, the poor guy.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say, you know, I have no joint pain whatsoever. I still train. Like I said, I'm not putting on, you know, 4 plates on the squat, or, you know, I'm still using 100-pound dumbbells to press or whatever, but I have no pain. And considering, you know, I tore this bicep, I have a partial tear in this one, you can see, but
yeah.
I never had this one fixed. This one was repaired, but I feel actually really, really healthy. And, you know, there's nothing I can't do when I train. I'm not getting into like yogas, and I did everything when I was training for Olympia, Pilates and kettlebell training, but I'm doing just regular strength training. I do cardio every day. I get up, usually this is cutting into my cardio time. I'll probably get it on the cardio after we do this.
My bad.
But it's one of those things where I'm just doing what's functionable in order to look a certain way, if it makes any sense. I'm not trying to gain muscle. I'm not trying to necessarily lose muscle, like I know I'm trying to downsize, but I'm doing it gradually because I think as an age, you start losing a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's really my goal. And like I said, I'm just trying to create that leaner physique, but you know, I'm still keeping the arms. That's the main, you know, still got the arms, man, because that's what's impressive when you walk around, right?
Absolutely. Every time you walk into the Cutler with the t-shirts, you know, the people flock to you. There's Jay Cutler.
You know what's funny, Ron, is like, it is so hard to lose muscle. It is so hard when you had so much density over the years, and I carried it for so long. I mean, like I said, I was that big at 20. So
you know what? You were meant to be big. That's the thing a lot of people don't get. Some people, they were just never meant to be big, and they really forced the issue with a lot of stuff, a lot of training, and it was not what their body was meant to be. You, first year of training, I want to say 190 to like 240 in 1 year.
Yeah, 200 to 240 in weeks. I remember times I'd be like 3 pounds in a day. It's just crazy. But that was, you know, honestly, Chris Aceto wrote that first diet for me. I tell this story all the time because, you know, Lozowick did hook me up with Chris Aceto. I have to give him credit for that. Lozowick is the reason I became a bodybuilder, you know, no matter what. The guy I used to work for. He pushed me to do it. And he linked me up with Chris Aceto. He asked Chris Aceto to come down and look at me, and he did, like early in my career once Lou found me. Yeah. And Chris looked at me and he said, oh, he's good. You know, he went back and Lou's like, how'd he look in person? He's like, oh, he's good, you know, whatever. So in the time he said, okay, what do you eat? He wrote me out a diet. It was on the sheet of paper, and it was 6 meals. And I put it on my refrigerator, and I ate those 6 meals every day. And Chris, you know, he came back down because Lou's like, hey, he's making improvements. I want you to go look at him. And, you know, the funny thing is, Chris told me this way later, and Lou called him and said, okay, how's he look now? And he says, holy shit, this kid's going to be Mr. Olympia someday.
Wow.
Because I catch how much he's improved. So it was just, once I got the diet in place, it was like everything just clicked. And I stress to this day, and anyone watching this, because anything I put out, I want people to take at least a couple things from. I can tell stories all day long, but the diet is so crucial to improvements and finding the right combinations for your personal goals. It's not what Jay Cutler does, or, you know, Lee Haney or Dorian Yates or whatever. We all ate differently, but you got to find what works for you in order to make the gains and make the proper gains. And the diet is, I mean, if you're not eating the diet, then don't go to the gym. You're just wasting your time. It's like trying to run a car and no gas. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So you have to have a set diet. You got to have that. Once you find that right combo, man, you never know where your body can go.
So one thing, I probably have asked you this in one of the many interviews, but so when you finally did become Mr. Olympia, do you think it was a bigger moment, personal victory for you, because it took a few years and it was a real struggle to beat Ronnie Coleman? He was amazing. Rather than if you had won it like your first time out or your second time out without a lot of struggles along the way.
I think those seconds built my career. I have to give Ronnie Coleman a lot of credit for being so great because he made me great. I wish I would have won it a lot sooner, Ron.
Of course.
I mean, I always said, I don't know if you ever recall or read my story, and I said I'm going to retire at 30, and I ended up retiring at 40 because it took me a lot longer to win that damn Olympia. I won at 33.
Yeah.
But those second places, it allowed me to go do the Arnolds. It allowed me to travel the world. It allowed me to do things that I probably wouldn't have done if I was Mr. Olympia, because I know, once I won that Olympia crown, I kind of scaled back on the international stuff. I didn't build that up until after I retired and stepped away from the stage. Like, I missed the whole opportunity because international following is massive. It's insane. Every time I go there, it's, I'm like taken back by like how much following there is there. But it really helped my career. I mean, let's be real. The underdog is always looked upon as like someone that people admire, because when it's easy and the struggle isn't there, sometimes people eye that as like, oh, it was easier for him to get through. I'm not going to respect him as much. But people saw me in the trenches. And the thing is with me is I put out content. Like I did what I call my social media earlier, before social media existed, meaning I put out the DVDs, even though they were a revenue stream for us. I did one every year to show my lifestyle, show how I was training, how I was eating, how it varied. I launched one every year, and I took the time to do that. And, there was a lot of time and effort put into that, and having someone in your house and filming, we'd shoot it over a certain amount of time. But I was just kind of like, I just wanted to put that stuff out there so people could see it. And I let people into my life and into my house and in my dogs and everything else. So it was like they could actually relate. They saw how I shopped, and they saw how I cooked and how I relaxed and what I did out in and outside the gym, and the little things I did in the gym and how I put the weights on. I mean, they pay attention to everything. People study those things. So I think that really created the branding also, and had people start following me because they realized, shit, Jay's just a normal guy like I am. And really, that's what I try to tell people is like, we're all the same. Like, we're all trying to shoot for our best personal thing. I was just on a higher level doing it more visual. But back then, our only outlets were magazines and DVD stuff. And that's how I put it out. And, that kind of transpired into now the social media, which I'm super active on. I have Insta stories every day, Snapchats. I'm doing YouTube videos 4 or 5 times a week now with, Dave Borlay, and putting out content. We're doing all sorts of cool things, even at my age, and just trying to show the lifestyle and what it can transpire into and get people more motivated to chase it. I mean, listen, losing isn't the worst thing in the world. Some of the greatest memories, Ron, you sat there and asked me, oh, when you won, and that, dude, the best times are when I was losing. The best times is when I wasn't great, when I wasn't expected to go and win every show. When you're expected to win, it's a lot of pressure. And it's not as fun because your expectations aren't above. Once you do it, you're like, oh, well, it's expected, and this is what I planned out to do. But when you fall back a little bit and you kind of evaluate and you're struggling, I mean, those struggle years with Ronnie, man, like, that was better. Once he was gone, it kind of, to be honest, it kind of sucked a little bit, because I didn't have that. It was just him and me for a lot of years. I mean, I'm looking right now at this huge poster they had in Times Square of me and Ronnie with the bicep. And, all the things on my walls are all related to the Ronnie years. It seems like all the covers were the struggle getting up there. And then once I won it, it's like, man, I made it to the top of the mountain. What do I do besides shell off, this guy, that guy? I went through the Cabo Beddells, the Dexter Jacksons, the Dennis Wolfs, all these up and coming guys. And every year it was like, oh, this guy's coming for you. And I'm like, okay, yeah, bring it on. Whatever. And listen, all these guys became great. I mean, Dexter won the Olympia, and, Wolf lives in Vegas. I mean, he was phenomenal. He was on his way, to right there, almost winning it. And, and I don't know what happened with Bedell. We were friendly, but, it's just like a lot of guys come and go. But, I was one of the 13, which I was fortunate about. And, I'm just riding out my legacy at this point.
So, you know, the guy who came after you, your friend Phil, I've been struggling to figure out why he's not as well loved as you. Let's put it that way. I mean, I remember people used to bag on your physique when you were Mr. Olympia, but nobody hated you. Nobody really seemed like they didn't like you. You were a likable guy. And I've talked to Phil. I know Phil in person when you speak face to face. He's a cool guy. I like Phil. But on social media, he has a way of coming across differently that it seems like it alienates people or angers people or something. You know, I know he's a friend of yours. I'm not going to have you trash the guy at all, but I want to know, what's your theory on why he's not as well liked as someone who's 7-time Mr. Olympia really should be?
You know what? Everyone has different paths they follow and how they handle situations. And I can tell you, like, you know, I've known Phil since day one. Phil's a phenomenal guy. Like, he's, you know, he's just a super great person, genuine. You know, he's very, he's shy in a way. So I think he's not going to create a lot of conversation. He's a lot like I was like that, you know, and I was able to kind of adapt a little bit. But you know what? He lives his personal life, you know, and he likes to keep it that way. He's not like one of these people. And you saw that even when he was on top, you didn't see a lot of Phil other than when he was training in the gym. And, you know, he did travel a lot, but right now he's choosing not to be as present at a lot of these events. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we can look at it from the outside, but what I try to tell everyone is, you don't live inside his life. So, you know, everyone's going to handle things differently. Just because I was a certain person doesn't mean that Phil necessarily should be exactly the same way. I mean, we saw this with Dorian Yates. He was very private. He showed up when he needed. He got the job done. And Phil, there's no one that does it better than Phil Heath. I mean, Phil Heath's going to come back and he annihilates the competition. He goes and does his job. And listen, some people strive to be the best in the world. Others strive, like I told you, I was focused on the business side, and I was like, I want to be active and I want to be out there. And that's the choice I made. So, you know, he just, you know, he has a very vocal voice when he wants to speak. People take it, you know, personally sometimes, because I think are just ridiculous. I think people, you know, take everything personal, especially in this business. But you know what? The internet gives people a voice to speak. And a lot of people should not be allowed to speak that voice their opinions. Listen, everyone is an expert, Ron.
Yeah.
And you know what? And just listen to what I say. He is great at what he does. He is the best in the world for the past 7, he's going on 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, he beat me to win that title. He's carried it since. He knows what he's doing. And don't try to tell him differently. Doesn't matter if he didn't show up at 100%. He still won. He's still looking at, I got 4 Sandows behind me. He's got 7.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's got 1 gold one I would love to have, actually, because it's like the 50th anniversary, you know.
Oh, wow.
But Phil's Phil. He's going to go down in history as probably the most winningest Mr. Olympia of all time. Listen, we can argue who's the greatest ever. I mean, people have their favorites, right? People say Schwarzenegger, they say Coleman, they say Haney. They go by records, right?
Yeah.
I expect him to have the best record. I predict it now, ever. Will it ever be broken? Shoot, I never thought Ronnie Coleman's record would be tied. I couldn't imagine it would be broken, but, you know, probably not in my era.
Right.
Or lifetime, I should say. But Phil, like, listen, if you've ever had a conversation with Phil, and I know some people will watch this and say, man, he's always been great to me. People that say, oh, he's a jerk or this and that, or he's too good, or Phil always takes the time for his fans. It's just that you got to get Phil there in order to take the time. And, you know, he's got a great heart, and anyone that doesn't follow him, you know, you can see on his daily things. I mean, he's a genuine person, and you know, I would always tell people, like, if you have the opportunity to speak to him face to face. The movie gave him a bad reputation.
I want to say, I think they might be upset at me, the Generation Iron people, because I had to do a Phil Heath column in MD for a time. I think we had it for like 2 years, and I did one whole column or whatever, one whole month. All I talked about was, did Generation Iron make Phil Heath look like a douchebag? And And I pointed out a bunch of instances in the movie, and I said, this is not Phil, that's not Phil, it was an act, it was a character that I don't know if they encouraged him to portray himself that way or if he thought that would be more cinematic and would be more like a real movie. But when I watched that movie, I was like rolling my eyes every time Phil would act a certain way because I said, this isn't Phil Heath. What is he doing here?
They built the underdog of Kai Green, and I think that's what built his popularity too. Was like the Jay Ronnie syndrome, right?
Yeah.
But Ronnie was just such a, he had his little, his little quotes and whatever. And I know you traveled. You went to Ronnie Coleman's camps every year to cover them, and you were a fan. I mean, if I asked you, Ron, you've been in the business for 30 years or whatever, probably longer.
No, but
who's the greatest bodybuilder of all time?
Flex Wheeler, I guess I would say.
But
my favorite physique. I mean that's where you get into like debates. Who's the best by title?
Well, let me ask you this: who would be bigger than Ronnie Coleman on the Mr. Olympia stage? Probably no one, right?
No,
that kind of shape. I mean, you saw him train. What was it like watching him train?
I mean, I saw him when he did those camps. He was really just getting back to training, and even then, it was impressive. Just super strong. His form it scared me to watch him. I said, this guy's going to hurt himself. But clearly, it worked very well for him. It was inspiring because he was as strong as like a world-class power lifter, but he was a bodybuilder, and he had such a joy for training. You could see he loved it. He loved every minute of it. Even I watch all his videos and DVDs, and you could see even when he was exhausted and he had the Skeletor face, he still loved every minute that he was in the gym and every rep with the 600, 700, 800 pounds on his back and all this. I mean, he was a bodybuilder's bodybuilder. He was like everything we all wanted to be.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, because like we would travel, like when we were on top, they'd book me and Ronnie for guest appearances because they wanted to build that thing up for the Olympia year, so they bring in 1-2 guys. And we traveled to events and we trained. The magazines made us out to be like enemies, but we were actually, really neutral friends.
Ronnie had no enemies.
No, but the thing is like we would train and like we would do the same weights. Like when we were bench, we'd do 315. Like he trained normal and then of course for the videos you saw him do all that crazy stuff. So he did do normal training, cruised up until. But what I did notice about Ronnie, it's just so funny. We flew to Pittsburgh one year, and I remember like the driver picked him up at the same time, and I came off the plane first, and I was waiting at the carousel for Ronnie. Here comes Ronnie walking. He flew there first class. He's in purple tights and boots, and I'm watching this guy walk, and this is when he was like after 03, he was massive,
Yeah.
And everyone's just looking, and I'm like, I remember thinking in my head, holy shit, Ronnie Coleman just flew to Pittsburgh in first class in pink and purple tights. And he comes there and, he's like, okay, I need to go to the gym. And I'm thinking like, man, I just flew all the way from Vegas and I'm tired and I just want to do dinner and chill and whatever. And he's like, I need to go train. I'm like, all right, so we get off the plane. We grab our bags. We go eat something. And he's like, let's go to the gym. So we go to the gym and here Ronnie Coleman I got to train legs. And I'm like, hell no, I'm not training legs,
Yeah.
And Ronnie's there, he put 6 plates on. He starts squatting with six plates after flying and being. And I said, this is why this guy's Mr. Olympia. That's when I realized, like, wow, I need to step it up in order to be to that level because like he didn't care. I remember him going out and guest posing. We guest posed at the Weinberger, the Bev Francis show, and he'd be out calling Steve like at 11 o'clock at night, like, hey, I need to go train legs. It seemed like every time we traveled, bro, because he had his days. So I think Friday was his leg day. So he would always do legs, and he would be squatting at 1 o'clock in the morning, like 600 pounds, like leg pressing, like all the plates. The same thing that you see because his legs were just. If you remember, Ronnie never had great legs early in his career. It's like when he transformed, his legs were like the best ever. Like Kai Green, like crazy hamstrings, and like I never seen anything like it. That guy just. There's no one that I've ever seen train with that capacity, like under any circumstance. He can stay out all night. The guy stayed up all night. That was the whole thing. I remember being in Pittsburgh and he'd be up until 6 a.m, like doing emails. And that's one thing about Coleman I can tell you, and his fans will understand this. That guy wrote back to every person, emailed, he did it all. Like
Wow.
he is just such a solid like guy. I mean, I can't say enough great things about Ronnie Coleman. And still, you watch him, like you just say, it's so. Ronnie Coleman's happy, man. Like I never seen anyone struggle with so much, and the guy's still so positive and so happy, and you know, he's enjoying his kids and his retirement, and you know, he's not shouting at me to get back up on stage these days. I'm sure that will come as soon as some of these surgeries over. But he's such a solid guy, man. And I get to see him a lot, you know, at these events. I saw him at the Arnold, and you know, he's a hero to me, man. Like he's someone that I really, really respect a lot for a lot of reasons.
Cool. You know what I always want to ask you? How did you end up with MD for a few years?
You know what, Blackman, Steve Blackman was like the second coming of like, you know, like a Joe Weider type person. Like he really he loved bodybuilding, and he really like was a fan of a lot of the guys.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of great things for the athletes. And I remember flying out. You know, he flew me out to Twin Labs when he owned Twin Labs for the first time back in '95. You talk about, you know, seeing me in '95. He flew me out there to talk to me about, you know, possibly that's when MD was making that natural like transformation from natural to a regular magazine or whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to meet with him, and he's like, man, you know, you have a lot of potential. I'd like to work with you. He put me on the cover. And then, you know, we started kind of a working relationship, and then this whole thing started. After 2001, I went out to dinner with John Romano and Steve Blackman, and you know, we were sitting down, and he's like, "What can we do together?" And I'm like, you know, let's, you know, why don't I do a column in your magazine, you know, and you know, somehow I can get compensated for that. And that's kind of what started it. People don't realize, but that started the whole magazine's endorsement type thing. I was the first one. And, you know, we started that, and then, of course, Flex Magazine caught on. They wanted me, so I remember I had Flex Magazine and MD, you know, both, and then eventually, like, there was that whole thing with, like, oh, you have to be a Weider athlete in order to win the Olympia, and they asked me to be exclusive. I took off for a while, but then, of course, when I came back in 2009, I signed a super exclusive deal with MD, probably the highest anyone's ever been paid. You know, he took care of me on that deal. We signed a long-term deal, and you know, Steve was just one of those people I could, you know, sit and converse with for hours about, you know, bodybuilding, about, you know, business, and you know, we learned a lot from each other. And him and his wife, we spent a lot of time at dinners and, you know, conversing about different opportunities. You know, I worked alongside a lot of great people. You being one of them. I remember talking to you every month. You know, we stay in touch, but I think, you know, it gave me a lot of opportunity to be exposed in a positive way. You know, that crazy shot, the quad stomp shot was MD cover. That changed everything. I mean, that shot nowadays is probably one of the greatest shots ever. He had, you know, Per Bedell as a photographer. He was exclusive to them. The best pictures, you know, that was his whole focus was, you know, I remember Joe Weider used to tell me, I'm never going to put out a bad picture of you. And I think Steve was the same way. I mean, he was like, you know, we want to put you out there in the best of light. And he let me be Jay Cutler and let me expose like the personality. And I think really that was the key. I think it was, you know, whereas Joe, you know, he always had, no one was ever a bad person who was featured in Flex or Muscle and Fitness, right? They created this stigma of like, oh, this guy's a big star and, you know, he's surrounded by success. I think Steve carried over and did the same thing. And I think that's really what gave me a great opportunity, especially when I was winning. I mean, we did these shoots. He shot me in the off season, which I never really did before. But for some, you know, he let me wear the tank top and the shorts. So it wasn't like, oh, you're going to take your shirt off. He just let me be Jay Cutler. And I think that's really what made me more comfortable in the relationship. And obviously things have transpired. The magazines haven't done what they had done in the past, and social media channels have grown. And, you know, I got to have like a lengthy 2-hour conversation with him a couple weeks ago. And, you know, we talked a lot about just different opportunities in the business. And, you know, Steve's still the same guy. And I know, you know, a lot of people have come and gone, but I think a lot of people don't give enough credit to Steve and what he's done. And I'll never forget the opportunities that he's continued to give to me, and you know, it's transpired into great success for me, and I thank him for that.
So, you know, social media, how do you feel it's really changed the game? Do you kind of wish social media had been around early in your career, or are you glad that it wasn't?
I don't, you know what, I don't have a negative. Social media is like, I embraced it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm active. I mean, I think it's really cool that it gives people the opportunity to walk. I mean, you can see, I mean, I can Insta story right now and people can say, oh, it's okay, I'm doing this or doing that. I mean, I get up every day and from morning to night, I kind of put stuff out there. It's a lot of work, but I think it gives the fans a broader scope of what really goes on. And, you know, I remember, Ron, and you're going to recall this, when the Olympia would take place, I wouldn't even know till like 2-3 months who won, because the magazines. I mean, it's not like you could pick up the phone and call your buddy who lives out, and you didn't have that network, right? You didn't have those friendships that I never knew who won the Olympia. I mean, Chris Aceto was my only link because he went and competed there with, you know, with Laura and stuff. But it was like, man, who won? You know,
well, I remember, because this is what we used to do. I'm a little bit older than you. We used to call up like the local gyms, because there seemed to be like a network of people that would call, you know, that's all we had was phones to call each other with. So like I would call Vinny Greco's gym, Powerhouse Gym in Watertown, say, what was the Olympia, top 5, anybody know? And usually they would have it like the next day and they would read it off.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, see, I didn't, you know, I didn't have that really where I was, it wasn't super, you were in more populated towards Boston area or whatever.
Right.
But for me, because remember, they would compete. That's when the Olympia was in like all over the place. Like they moved it around every year. Yeah. But now it's of course in Vegas. But it's just, you know, it's transpired. You got a lot of great personalities out there. I think some of the stuff that's on social media is total bullshit. I think people put out too much stuff. I think they do it just to get clicks or views or whatever. I'm not into that shit. Like I don't sit there and look, oh, I got this many likes, or you know, I'm too old for that. You know, I don't care. You know, I just put out stuff that's real. A lot of times I try to speak from the heart now with my posts, like meaning, oh, this means something. And, you know, I've kind of stepped back a little bit from posting a ton of stuff, just nonsense, but it seems like the training stuff's still important. Of course, we have, you know, endorsement deals, or we have partnerships that we still promote. I think that's a great channel for that. But listen, people are buying ads in the magazine. Now they're just, you know, putting them out on social media and buying digital ads and, you know, creating different things. And I think it's overwhelming. But at the same time, I think you have to embrace it, because that's just the way of the future. And I wish I could still sit in the bookstores and read magazines. I wish I had the time. I still get them to my house. They're not as fulfilled with as much information as they used to be.
Right.
And I don't know, I can't tell you right now who is the up and coming superstar, because there's just so many guys. There's not one if you know, we're bodybuilders, Ron. So if you said to me, well, who's the up and coming bodybuilding star? I really don't know. And that's disappointing to me. Like I liked how we used to know, okay, this guy's coming up through the nationals and he was third one year. He's moved up to second and now he's going to win. Like I remember when you went to the USA and the top 5 guys, you knew they were going to be pros. And good ones, but I think they you know, a lot of guys end up turning pro, and I think the talent field's a little less now. I hate to say weak, because that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of great talent, but people just aren't competing as much. They're becoming more socially active and putting out their content, and they're looking at it as like, hey, I can build my own platform instead of, you know, letting someone else put me on theirs, and that's how I'm going to transpire forward. So anyway, great.
What did you think when Classic came along? Did you think it was a necessary addition to the competition?
You know what? This is the way I feel. Okay, I'm a promoter.
Right.
I think I have nothing against men's physique, classic, body, whatever it is. I think it was a great opportunity for people that are kind of in between a men's physique and a bodybuilder, and they're not going to be big enough. But remember, it goes by the small waist and the broad shoulders. You still get, and I think a lot of people are confused, saying, "Oh, well, I'm more of a classic guy." And what I'm noticing, and this is my opinion, and visually I've seen this, so I'm not speaking from like being off on this, but a lot of people have now gone to classic, got away from men's physique, and now they realize, well, it's not even for me, so they're coming back to bodybuilding. And I feel this year, I just had a show this past weekend in Vegas, and I feel that the bodybuilding side is coming back a little bit. And I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see bodybuilding start to come back, because what I ask a lot of these guys is, when I'm out there and about, and I'm out there, everywhere, I say, what division you're competing in? They're like, well, they go from men's physique to classic to they still passionately want to be bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They may not want to be Kai Green's, Jay Cutler's, Phil Heath, Ronnie's, whatever. They may not, because they don't visually, just like me. I used to look at the magazines and look at Dorian Yates and say, there's no way I can ever be like this guy. Fast forward 10 years later, there I was.
Right.
But you're realistic about it. So I think that a lot of these guys in their heart want to be bodybuilders, because listen, it's all the same, whether you're physique or you're classic. You're training the same way, you're eating the same way. I don't care what anyone says. Like, they're like, well, they don't train their legs. No, I know all the, even men's physique guys, they train their legs, but remember, their genetics, they're more slender physiques. They have smaller waists, and I could never have been a men's physique or classic guy, because I never had a small waist, Ron. I was always dense. I had wider hips. I had big shoulders, but I had to create that illusion. I mean, even just to be a better bodybuilder, I had to make my waist look smaller by adding more muscle. Did I want to be? I say it over and over. I didn't want to be 300 pounds. I was happy being 240, but in order to be the best, I had to go above and beyond. And I think a lot of these people, as they compete, they're going to transpire. They're going to be putting on muscle, because if you're doing things right, you're going to make the progress. Yes, there's limitations as far as the body can go. But listen, in the beginning of this interview, we talked about potential guys. We've seen guys with muscle bellies out of control that just couldn't reach their potential. There's so much. It's not changed. These people are still being born and bred with certain body types. You can still be a full-fledged bodybuilder. It just takes time, and some people don't want to make that time commitment and really put in that effort, because it's eat, sleep, train. That's the lifestyle in order to be a top bodybuilder. I mean, it's a job, man. It's not, back in Arnold's days, and they would work in other jobs, but then the prize money was different. Nowadays, with the revenue streams and the way the guy's legs are, just think about the leg size compared to people can point at different, but listen, the equipment's better. I just went to the URSA show. I went to the big equipment show. There's so much better equipment. The diets are totally different. Think about the diets 25 years ago, Ron. Like, we ate certain things that we would never eat now in diets. I mean, there's certain foods out there. I mean, think about this flourless bread now. Like, I started this whole Ezekiel thing. Everyone does it now. Back in 1990, there was no such thing. There was no Whole Foods, and there was no, people weren't talking organic and all this stuff. Like, the supplements, I mean, we can talk about supplements. Like, the supplements have changed, man. There's so many good over-the-counter supplements now that we didn't have. I mean, remember back then, like, we barely had protein powders. Like,
they were horrible supplements back in the day. Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, everything's, I mean, and listen, you being in your 40s, you use supplements. There's no question. I know you do. You've endorsed the brand for a long time, but like, I take supplements. I don't sit there and say, okay, this is the end all, but this is a supplemented in with my program, and I've seen a lot of stuff actually visually work for me that I didn't take 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So everything's advanced. I mean, you have to grasp it. There's a lot of great potential guys. I mean, I see some social media guys. I see Simeon Panda is unbelievable physique. I mean, he's like a social media guy. Colin Von Moger, another. I mean, Bradley Martin's super popular. Even this guy, Christian Guzman, who doesn't have a crazy physique, but he's got just a cool following. I watch all their YouTube stuff. I mean, these guys are just people to watch, like, because there's just certain stuff going on that they do on this life. It just seemed cool life. And I think people want to get the robotic bodybuilding routines of like, hey, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to eat chicken breast, and then I'm going to go lay down and watch TV or play video games.
Yeah. So in closing, I just want to let people know how many things you have going on. Post-retirement, you're incredibly busy. This is all I can think off the top of my head, and you're going to add a few things to that. So you have Cutler Nutrition. You promote how many contests now?
5.
5 contests, all national qualifiers, I believe. You have Cutler Athletics, the clothing company.
Yep, I do Mega Fit Meals.
Okay, it's a meal prep company.
Yeah, I have a company based in Kentucky that is doing the food prep. I'm still doing Atomic shoes. I brought Atomics back. You know, we've all worn Atomics. I'm partners with them now. I still do the Signature Fat Grips. I do the Smart Shaker cups that I own now, the rights to the J Cup. I'm doing all stuff outside. Medical real estate. I actually have an ammo cutting and cleaning business for brass, so I'm doing that now. But I'm doing the list goes on and on. But you know, the main focus is still. I like to talk in the fitness side. It's promoting. I mean, I do the diet programs here and there. Have a team that does that. But it's still out there promoting the sport of bodybuilding, and it's in a positive way. So what I'm trying to do is I'm networking. I still have coming up FIBO. I'll be at Philex Australia. I have the Cutler show the end of April. I'll be in Salt Lake City actually for the showdown here. That's this weekend. And then May I have a bunch of military stuff. I'm doing a lot of stuff with the military. I want to touch on that a little bit. Yeah. I do a lot with all the different military people where you know I'm just doing meet and greets and really trying to support the troops because that's where my core audience comes from. So all branches of military, I'm doing meet and greets. I had one back in San Diego a couple weeks ago with the Navy. I'm actually heading out to Virginia the first week of May. I'll be out there for the 2nd, 3rd, and the 3rd I'm visiting the Pentagon, which is kind of cool. And then I'll be at Pittsburgh. I'm going to go out and support that show just for one day, and then I have to fly over and do a gym appearance in Kentucky. I'll be at Body Power, it looks like. I'm doing a tour around that. I'll be out in Arizona on the 19th for a gym appearance, and then I'm off for Memorial Weekend, and then June rolls out. I mean, I'm at the American Fit Expo in Houston, and then I go over to my show out in Wyoming. I have a show on the 22nd. So it's just on and on and on. I mean, it just cranks out. The year's pretty much written on paper. I can name off most of the things in my head, but try to find some personal time in between and continue to work on my current projects. I just remodeled my whole house, so it's been kind of a zoo here. Anyone that's seen that online, it's been nonstop with that, and it's been great. You know, it's been a great run for me, and I'm still super active. I look forward to seeing you at the end of the month. You'll be at my show, right?
Of course.
I hear our lineup is supposed to be pretty good once again.
There's a ton of people around here getting ready for the Jay Cutler Classic in Boston, Mass. Absolutely. Yeah. A ton of people.
So I'm excited about that. You know, that's always, I would say that's one of the more successful ones because that's where I'm from, and you know, we usually have a knockout crowd there. So hopefully we'll get to meet up when I'm out there. You know, I'm only coming out there quick. I'm going to see my parents, the day before, and then I'm going to hit the show. And then I actually have to fly. I fly to Philadelphia Sunday morning to do the Fit Expo in Philly. I'm going to do a seminar out there. So I don't stay long in Boston this time. Usually I stay after, but I'm right out after the show.
Yeah, usually it's the same weekend as Pittsburgh, and you go right from Pittsburgh, fly to Boston. Then I think you would stay out west with your family for a couple of days. And
we used to do it that way, but now it's the week prior, right? So the Pittsburgh's after, and like I said, I'll be out there. So it's kind of like I'm bouncing back and forth. I get a lot of air miles already. I mean, I'll reach my 100,000 by May. United.
Wow. Yeah, man. That's something I don't know how you do is the traveling. Managing all your business and everything, that's one thing, but to do it while you're spending so much time on planes and in airports and to and from.
Dude, I'll travel 200,000 miles this year, easy on airplane.
Wow. That's crazy, Jay.
I'll take it. Very thankful, and anyone out there that hasn't brought me out, make sure you guys, if you're watching this, I want to travel, so make sure you guys hit me up and bring me someplace I haven't been before, which is very cool.
Good luck finding one of those. All right, cool, man. Well, Jay, especially in light of how busy you are, I very much appreciate you taking this time to talk to me and for the MD audience and everybody out there. Everybody watching this on YouTube later on, please subscribe to the channel here. And Jay, can't wait to see you again. Known you a long time. Hope to keep knowing you for a very long time. Hope we're both in this business another 30 years.
Well, hopefully we can brainstorm and maybe do some. We'll talk about some of these more. I think people like to hear the stories, so
I love
at some point we'll get back on here. But thanks again for Steve Blackman and his staff, all you guys over at MD. You know, keep doing your thing and keep promoting, and you know, hopefully I can continue to be part of that.
Awesome.
And I look forward to the next time.
All right, for the Ronline Report, this has been me with four-time Mr. Olympia, Jay Cutler. Thanks for watching.